welcome to Spanish Answers, episode 15. And guess what? Today we are finally finishing El Voseo. So, part 5 took us a while. I know that I wasn't certain if I was going to do this or not, but I figured, why not? Let's go for the gusto. So, today we are indeed going to finish El Voseo. So, I know you've been waiting for it. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so a quick recap. We've talked in regards to el voseo, the use of vos instead of tú. We've talked about tutear versus vocear. We've talked about the history of el voseo and how it went from Spain to Latin America. We have talked about how to conjugate it in the present indicative, in the imperative, both positive and negative, in the imperfect and simple past tense, and the specific voseo pronouns. So today, we're going to finish off our conjugations with the future tense, conditional tense, present subjunctive tense, and past subjunctive tense. To start off with, we have the future tense, and future tense is really easy to make. It's one of my favorites. So basically, you just take the whole verb and you add that special future tense ending. And we're not going to get into that too much because that would be a whole completely different episode. But for now, let's go ahead and start with our llamar, aprender, and abrir verbs. The same 3 verbs we've used in all the other episodes. Helps with consistency. So, yo llamaré, tú llamarás, él, ella o usted llamará, nosotros llamaremos, vosotros llamaréis, ellos, ellas o ustedes llamarán, and vos llamarás. So, for aprender, it's aprenderé, aprenderás, aprenderá, aprenderemos, aprenderéis, aprenderán, and vos is aprenderás. So, abrir is the exact same as aprender. Abriré, abrirás, abrirá, abriremos, abriréis, abrirán, abrirás. Oh, it's a lot of R's. So basically, vos for future tense is the exact same conjugation as tú. Llamarás, llamarás. Aprenderás, aprenderás. Abrirás, abrirás. Pretty straightforward. But remember, there are a lot of differences between the Latin American countries. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I've got just a quick recap screen of the different countries in Latin America and if they use el tuteo, if they use el tuteo, and that's kind of seen as the educated form, but they also use el voseo, or if they use el voseo, el tuteo, and the more formal usted, all 3 as different levels of formality, or if they only use el voseo instead of el tuteo. But we've already delved into that, so if you like to refresh your memory on that, you can go back to those beginning episodes where we talk about el voseo and kind of introduce it. It is, however, a good reminder that not all of the Latin American countries use the same conjugation as what we've just talked about, right? So we're going to talk about the basic vos form for the future tense or for the conditional tense. So in this episode, I'm just going to refer to it as the basic form, and then we'll kind of highlight the different exceptions as we go. Now, as I go through this, if you are watching this on YouTube, I have highlighted all of the conjugation endings in purple, and then as we go to the exceptions, I'll highlight the changes from one slide to the other in red, just to help make it easier visually to see what's changing. So, basic form of future tense for vos is the same as el tuteo. So, has and as. Llamarás, llamarás. Tú llamarás, vos llamarás. Now, exceptions are going to be that you change the A with an accent S to an E with an accent S. So instead of llamarás, it's llamaréis. And instead of aprenderás, it's aprenderéis. And instead of abrirás, it's abriréis. And this happens in Colombia and Venezuela, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico. Now, in Colombia and Honduras, you still have the alternative of using el tuteo. And in Venezuela, one thing to note is that they really only use this E with an accent and then S in the Andean area. Otherwise, they use a different form, and that form is where you add an I after the E. So instead of llamarás or llamaréis, it's llamaréis. Hear that little fluctuation there with the I? So it's E with an accent mark, I-S, and this is in the Zulia state. Again, just add an I after that accented E. So it's llamaréis, aprenderéis, abriréis. Pretty straightforward. In Eastern Cuba, they follow the same vos as in Venezuela, but the S is optional. So you might hear llamaré instead of llamaréis, and abriré instead of abriréis. And then Chile, which you will notice as we go through this episode, just has a bunch of exceptions. They just like to be different. So for them, you drop the E with the accent, and the S is still optional. So it's llamarí or llamaris, aprenderí or aprenderis, abrirí, abriris. And the I does have an accent mark. Ecuador also follows this, except that the S is not optional. So you're always going to have llamaris, aprenderis, abriris. In Peru, basically follows the same thing, except that its AR verb endings end in the tuteo form. So you've got aprenderis still, and abriris, just like Ecuador, but it's llamarás, just the same as tuteo, the basic form for vos that we had. And just a side note, when I say Peru, I'm really talking about Arequipa City. Hope I'm saying that right, but that's where they use this form. On to the conditional tense. This is another tense that I love because it is so easy to form. Again, it's just like future in that all of the vowel changes come after the main verb stem. So llamar, you add ia, right? So it's llamaría, yo llamaría, tú llamarías, él, ella o usted llamaría, nosotros llamaríamos, vosotros llamaríais, ellos, ellas o ustedes llamarían, vos llamarías. And then for aprender and abrir, it is the exact same thing. So aprendería, aprenderías, aprendería, aprenderíamos, aprenderíais, aprenderían, aprenderíais. And that's vos, aprenderías. And then you have abriría, abrirías, abriría, abriríamos, abriríais, abrirían, abrirías. With conditional tense, the basic conditional tense form for el voseo, it's the exact same as el tuteo. Llamarías, llamarías. Tú aprenderías, vos aprenderías. Love it. And best of all, there's only one exception to this, and it is, guess who? That's right, Chile. So all they do is they add an I after the A, and they make the S optional. So it's llamaríais instead of llamarías. And it's aprenderíais instead of aprenderías. Abriríais. Or, alternatively, no S, so it's llamaríai, aprenderíai, abriríai. Kind of a nice, like, roller coaster movement with your mouth there, but that's Chile's exception. So moving on again to the present tense subjunctive. So beginning with yo llame, tú llames, él, ella o usted llame, nosotros llamemos, vosotros llaméis, ellos, ellas o ustedes llamen, vos llames. Aprender, aprenda, aprendas, aprenda, aprendamos, aprendáis, aprendan, aprendas. Abrir, exact same endings as aprender. Abra, abras, abra, abramos, abráis, abran, abras. So the vos, as I'm sure you've noticed, is the exact same as el tuteo. That's the basic form for vos in present subjunctive. Tú llames, vos llames. Tú abras, vos abras. Really straightforward. And the exceptions are also really straightforward for the most part. So there are a lot of countries with an exception, and it's Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. And all of these countries add an accent mark to the ending. So instead of llames, it's llames. Instead of aprendas, it's aprendas. Instead of abras, it's abras. Slight difference, but still important. Now, in Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, they can alternate el voseo conjugation with the accent over it with the tuteo, but these are kind of accepted only in educated circles. So if you use el tuteo, you're considered really learned. For Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, there's not really this stigma. You can alternate between el voseo and el tuteo without people really forming ideas about your education, at least on paper, right? So in Bolivia, on the eastern part though, they use el voseo. On the western part, they use el tuteo. So just some things to note there. And then there's Chile, which I'm sure you've already guessed has a little bit of a different change. So it's definitely the most exceptional for this tense. It keeps all of the accent marks, but it changes the AR verb ending to an I with an accent mark, and then it adds a regular I to the ER and IR verb endings. And of course, the S becomes optional. So instead of llames or even llames, it's llami or llamis. Instead of aprendas, it's aprendais or aprendai. Instead of abras or abras, it's abrais or abrai. Let's move on to our last conjugation, the past tense subjunctive. This, for the most part, is a pretty easy verb ending to use, or easy conjugation. Except that it can be a little confusing because there are two potential endings, right? So there's era and ese. And we're not really going to delve into the where, when, how, why between era and ese on this verb ending. That's a different episode. But I have shown you the different endings you can use for abrir, and then in llamar and aprender, I've just kept it with era, which is the one that I learned while I was learning Spanish. So, yo llamará, tú llamarás, él, ella o usted llamará, nosotros llamáramos, vosotros llamaréis, ellos, ellas, ustedes llamarán, vos llamarás. Aprendiera, aprendieras, aprendiera, aprendiéramos, aprendierais, aprendieran, aprendieras. In abrir, it can be yo abriera or yo abriese. Tú abrieras, tú abrieses. Él, ella o usted abriera o abriese, abriese. Nosotros abriéramos o nosotros abriésemos. Vosotros abrierais, vosotros abrieseis. Ellos, ellas o ustedes abrieran o abriesen. Vos abrieras or vos abrieses. Okay, basically, in the past subjunctive, the vos conjugates the exact same way as the tú, and that's really easy. In fact, the only exception is our beloved friend Chile, which adds an I after the A, and basically the S is once again optional. So instead of llamarás, it's llamarai or llamarais. Instead of aprendieras, it's aprendierai or aprendierais. And instead of abrieras, it's abrierai or abrierais. Really, if you've been looking at tú and vosotros and vos, Chile seems to follow the vosotros instead. So vosotros llamarais, vos llamarais. And then they kind of decide, well, maybe we don't want that S. So llamarai instead. Now, when it comes to irregular endings, I have not seen any. So if you know of any, please let me know and I'll correct this. But as far as I can tell, none of these verbs in these specific tenses have irregular endings. Granted, in the imperfect subjunctive for like ir and ser, it is still fueras or fueses, but that really follows the irregular stem change for the whole verb, like fuera, fueras, fuera, fuéramos, fuerais, fueran, and fueras. and not just a weird irregular ending for the specific vos conjugation. So let's do a quick recap. Basically, for future tense, use el tuteo form, A with an accent mark, S, and most of the exceptions are going to use E with an accent mark, S, except for Venezuela and Cuba, because they follow the vosotros form, where they add an I before the S, so eis. And Chile, Ecuador, and Peru remove the I. So Peru also uses the tuteo form for AR verbs. For conditional tense, use el tuteo form, I with an accent mark, A, except in Chile, which, remember, follows the vosotros form, so they add an I after that A and make the S optional. In present subjunctive, use el tuteo, AS, and ES, and the majority of the sections are going to add accent marks, except in Chile, which follows that vosotros form, so it just adds an I after the accented letter. And on the AR verbs, you lose the E, so it becomes just an I with an accent, S, or really optional S. For the past subjunctive, same as the present, you use el tuteo, except in Chile, which uses the vosotros form, so it's I with a potential S. Basically, if you use the tuteo form, you're going to be okay in most places. And that's it. Woohoo! We can celebrate now because we finished El Voseo. So if you have any other questions or there are other topics that you'd like me to discuss, please send them to me at contact@languageanswers.com. That's contact@languageanswers.com. And this episode is produced by Language Answers Ltd, and you can find them at www.languageanswers.com. I am the owner, and I'm a translator, podcaster, and editor. So if you have any documents in Spanish that need translating into English, or maybe you have any documents in English that just need a second eye review, go ahead and go to www.languageanswers.com for your free quote. Alright, so that's a wrap. That's it. We're finally done with El Voseo. Thank you so much for being so patient, and as we go through that entire series on it, I really hope that it did help you, though, that really deep dive into El Voseo and how it's used and conjugated and its history, and just giving you some of that context there as well. But now we can move on to other things. So next week will be a surprise because it won't be El Voseo. But let's, there's a lot more that is also worth delving into more deeply in Spanish. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll see you there in 2 weeks. Till then, hasta luego!